Welcome into another edition of Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look inside Georgia Southern Athletics. Colin Lacy alongside the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, and a very special guest on a special edition of Inside Eagle Nation. Got the director of Georgia Southern Athletics, Jared Benko, to wrap up the 22-23 athletic calendar year. We put kind of a spin on it last week, but the official ending of the 21-22 athletic calendar year. Jared, appreciate you joining us.
Oh, sure thing. I was watching Danny play the percussions on the way in. I didn't know you have a good beat to it.
I've heard it about 180 some times now.
No, it's hard to believe. You know, we put out the briefing today. It's I think it finally hit me after obviously we exited the baseball regional, and then I think it was until the next day, that Monday, I'm like, wow, it's like you're on a fast-moving train in a good sense, and the train stops, and you're like, all right, what's next? You know, and then your mind's already going towards the fall. So it's been a heck of a year, been a heck of a spring. So.
Start there with the baseball regional hosting here at J.I. Clement Stadium, and you've talked about it a lot. You mentioned it earlier today in the Benko briefing that came out, but being able to host an event like that here in Statesboro, and not only host it, but we talked about it, there's a very thin line between being able to host it and have it be a success. And I think having it a success was definitely on the docket this year.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to having, great people around you. I shared this with a colleague. I was in Atlanta earlier this week and was talking to a colleague that hosted as well. And I said, to me, the piece is so impressive is we might have 40%, maybe half the staff of some of the other institutions. They call them the Power Five or Autonomy Five. And to me, the piece that was so impressive is, when you put in a bid, there's a lot that goes into it. But really, where the separator, as you mentioned, was really the ability to execute on it. And I thought that was just something that I was so proud of. And it's people coming together. It's not, hey, there was no job too small for anybody. And I just think it's a testament to one, the people we have here at the university, but also to just the culture. And just really proud of everyone's effort. I mean, to me, listen, we wanted to go out and get it out of the regional and obviously play up in Knoxville as it turned out. But having said that, I mean, I think we got some great feedback and from the NCAA and others, and really positioned ourselves well for the future.
Did you have a opportunity a couple of weeks ago when Georgia Southern hosted the regional kind of sit back and realize what was happening? Because we talked about it last week, how we sat back and looked, and Notre Dame and Texas Tech opened up the regional at J.I. Clement Stadium, and just sitting back, hearing the Notre Dame fight song over the PA, you're like, man, this kind of brings it full circle of what's actually happening this week.
It hit me Saturday night against Notre Dame. Just having been at some other institutions before we've hosted, it doesn't get lost on you, the gravity, or the magnitude of that event. But for us, for me, it was going toe-to-toe with Notre Dame, and that crowd was so electric. Noah's home run, I was actually on the hill and down the first base line in right field, and I jumped and caught my footing because I could have rolled down the hill. But it was something about that night, and that's where, again, quite frankly, that's what we aspire for all our venues. You want that same feeling in Paulson and obviously at Hanner and others. And I'm just so thankful for our fans and donors, supporters that came out, because that place was super electric. I actually had a friend visiting in town from Starkville, and you mentioned y'all met him too, and he's like, man, this is what college baseball is about. And so just really proud of J.I. and proud of our fans.
All right, to go through all the improvements, to roll in portable bleachers down the first base line, you also mentioned in the briefing today that that's going to be part of possible more improvements at J.I. Clements over the next few months. Two parts here. One, are those bleachers here to stay? And two, how do you envision J.I. Clements getting better?
Yeah, I talked to actually Coach Ed and I visited earlier this afternoon with Chris Davis. We were talking about a couple things, and when you get excited about stuff, I start talking real fast, and Chris does too. I think his head was spinning at all the stuff we have thinking about. But I'll share with you a couple things. One, I like to think whether those same bleachers stay there or we get some more, we buy some more. The plan is to keep those there. We do out of safety and abundance. We need to extend the netting down the first baseline, just from a standpoint of some rockets that can be hit there. We didn't have any least that I was aware of during the regionals. But so yes, we also are working with Yellowwood on some outfield decking right now to the left of the Blue Monster. We're also there might be some that have the affinity for the green paint in the stadium, but I want to get that all blue, Georgia Southern blue. And then the really big piece, for us is going to be the renovation of the Wiggins building or the demo and ultimately starting over there. And we're going to have a structural engineer come in and make sure it's done right. But that facility, what you'll find is it'll be first and foremost, is going to address our needs. And so when you start looking at, obviously the way it's currently set up, a bigger locker room up to 50 lockers, team meeting space, obviously team, player space, or student athlete space, coaches' offices in the hitting lab, pitching lab, fueling station, athletic, obviously a satellite athletic training center. So, so we start with kind of our wish list, and then you have to see how it lays out, and ultimately the costs that come in. But no, we're going to hit it pretty hard, and so we've already had the kind of a kickoff meeting scheduled here pretty soon, and part of it, honestly, too, is coming off my last institution when we did a $68 million stadium renovation or a totally complete build at Mississippi State. Baseball is probably the one sport I've worked on a lot, just relative to facilities. And so I'm excited to sit down with Coach Hennon and excited to sit down with our team and really lay it out.
Had a couple of questions come in earlier on this afternoon on Facebook. You kind of answered Wes's question on the upgrades to J.I. Clement Stadium, but Moose asking a question, and we hear it a lot of the football team and their success having an impact on all 17 sports around Georgia Southern athletics. How does an event like this, where Georgia Southern baseball had not only a great year on the field, but an opportunity to host a regional, how does that affect all of Georgia Southern athletics?
Well, it's huge. I mean, we always talk about a rising tide lifts all boats. We actually had a softball PSA on campus today, prospective student athlete, and we're talking to her because she has a chance to be a game changer in a lot of ways. And I said, "Hey, did you see our baseball regional?" Well, sure. I said, we were one of 16 national seeds. I was like, we can do the same thing for softball. And part of that is not that shift in the paradigm, but we've talked about it. We want to be competitive at everything. And so what it further illustrates is you can come to Georgia Southern, get a great degree, have success on the field or on the court and diamond, whatever, and also socially grow and mature. And so we have everything we need here to be successful. So to answer your question, going back, is when we start raising money, and it's going to be here the next several weeks, raising money for JI, in particular for this new facility for baseball, that's a chance for Eagle Nation to continue to step up and help support. Now, the one thing I talked specifically the last question, Danny, about what it looks like. We're also going to tie in a lot of some premium seating and some fan amenities too, because baseball is such a social sport. If you think about it, it brings families together. It's a great sport, and we're going to have some opportunities, I think, to create some cool spaces within this new expansion as well.
Baseball was the first sport last year to go back to 100% capacity. It was just over a year ago today that happened.
Yep.
This being the first full year off of a worldwide pandemic, what do you feel you got accomplished?
Well, yeah, I actually shared this the other day. I'm always pleased. You're never really happy, but you're always pleased. I think for us, listen, this fall with football was tough. I mean, it was not a great season. Proud of our guys for persevering and Coach Whitley for getting through that. But you look at the other fall when you had volleyball and soccer go up 100 plus RPI spots. Soccer and a first year coach, get to the championship game for soccer. Basketball, listen, Coach Berger and I talk, and I'm excited about some of the newcomers he has this year. This is his first really true recruiting calendar. Yeah. Coach Howard obviously had 18 wins last year, and she continues to have success. And really the spring's where he hit our stride, because you look at, Mimi Burke, first year winning Sun Belt, Carter Collins, obviously success getting to the top 25, obviously out of Arizona. And then you look at baseball, we did hosting a regional and obviously being a national seed. So we're starting to hit our stride, and then what you'll see this fall with Coach Helton is really that momentum is going to swing into the fall. And so it's always been about getting the right people on the bus in the right spots, and we've got those folks there now. And we just actually had a track candidate on campus, and we have an opportunity to really get our track program going. So at the end of the day, it's all people based. Everything we do is people based, and getting the right folks. And if you get the right folks on board, they usually recruit the right student athletes too.
We talked about it last week, and you've mentioned it many times. 3 different teams in the spring got to NCAA postseason with men's and women's golf and baseball, obviously. When you kind of take a step back and look at it from the 100,000-foot view, how big is that for a spring sport 3 different times, or 3 different spring sports, rather, to get to NCAA postseason the first time it's ever happened here at Georgia Southern?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's big, but we talked about before, we're a process-driven organization. I mean, we don't always focus on the outcomes. It's more about what goes into the process. And so, honestly, I don't do a great job sometimes pausing and probably appreciating, because you're always every day coming in trying to get better. And I always say it sounds Pollyanna, but that's really our mentality, is every day coming in, how do we get better? And listen, some days you don't get better. Some days, I said, some days you're the pigeon, some days you're the statue, right? And some days you are the statue, and you don't have days that are great, but you have to bounce back from that. So I think it was huge. I also would tell you, because things were going so fast this spring, we probably didn't have a full appreciation for it. I think this summer, as you kind of reflect and you look at ways doing a self-eval of an assessment, it probably will have a greater magnitude of that. But it was huge, and I think it kind of goes back to where I see us and where we see us going as a department. I mean, I'm telling you, the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's going to be special. And what you're starting to see is some of those dividends coming out of the pandemic, especially.
And we looked at the on-field success, but off the field, we're less than 2 months ago breaking ground on an indoor practice facility for County Boston Stadium, something that wasn't even conceived maybe a year or 2 ago, and then also the groundbreaking for the Jack and Ruth Ann Hill Convocation Center, with everything else that is occurring in Statesboro and Bullock County.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. If I go around the Eagle Clubs, which I did, and I said, hey, when did you think we'd have ever $80 million in facilities? People look at me like I had 3 eyes. But I also would share with you, too. I mean, you're seeing the new fence going up around Pulse, and we're getting ready to spend, over $500,000 and north of that to do new locker room and new dugouts for softball. We're doing some things down the Hearing Pavilion. I can go on and on. We're trying to touch as many facilities as possible. And that honestly was one of our biggest needs coming in here, was we were behind facilities, behind on infrastructure. And people can say what they want to, but 16 to 18-year-olds, when you recruit them, they're very visual, and they want to see progress and want to see results. And so, it's interesting, the indoor facility, we brought it to the foundation board in December of 20. And broke ground on it April of 22. So you're looking at about a 16-month, delta or turnaround. So when people say, well, baseball might take a while, we'll just, we want you to get involved, but stand back and watch. We're getting ready to do it again with baseball. And part of that is that vision of, comprehensive excellence. And you know what? We can't do it without Eagle Nation. And we're so thankful and blessed to have people step forward, both on the Convocation Center, but also the indoor. And really with baseball, I think people saw this weekend, we're not very far off from being in Omaha again. And I think that's where some of these projects we're talking about, it adds to the game day environment, but also it's going to help, really recruit elite student athletes and even better where we are.
You talk about you got to go to a lot of the Eagle Club tours this year. What's the kind of feel around Eagle Nation? I know there's a lot of success and a lot of hype around the football season. A lot of success in the spring has got everybody excited. But what's the biggest kind of factor that you saw going throughout and touching a lot of Eagle Nation this year?
Well, it's excitement. I was joking, and Danny was emceeing, obviously, majority of those, as I felt like the warm-up act for Coach Helton a lot of the times. And, he's like he's more like the Beatles, and I'm like the cover band from around the corner. But there's general excitement. I think, going through this past fall and knowing the headaches and some of the challenges we have, and what you're seeing is further affirmation, whether it be in recruiting, whether it be in someone of staff, whether it be in the spring game. You're seeing all the positive signs of the direction we're going. And so people are excited. Listen, we can say what we want to, but, football, I always say, if you think about a car, football is the engine, the carburetor, the transmission, the water pump, you name it. I mean, we go as football goes. But having said that, what you're also seeing, we have a lot of coaches out on the road, and you're seeing excitement. Coach Willis, as an example, was talking about raising money for a new Terraflex, which is a new floor for volleyball, and how that benefits, recovery and obviously prevents injuries for student athletes. And you're seeing people saying, well, you know what? We went to a couple of volleyball matches this year. We loved it. And so I think coming out of the pandemic, what I saw was a further appreciation for maybe some other sports that don't traditionally get the attention. And then ultimately, everybody's always excited to see Danny Reed. So that kind of always takes the cake there.
There you go.
I didn't realize that was a thing.
Oh, yes, you did.
Not for someone who doesn't know what I look like. Well, unless they watch this, I guess. But
I'm just saying, I mean, everybody, is kind of, I mentioned the Beatle reference. When they see Danny, it's always a big deal for folks.
The Beatles are big.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things off the field that went really well for Georgia Southern this year. I know something that's been big for you and Chris Davis as well, being able to get the nutrition program really up and running, a cumulative 3.16 GPA overall, a lot of things that don't necessarily get the limelight that they probably deserve, but a huge part of what Georgia Southern athletics has been about.
Yeah, listen, at the end of the day, we're an institution of higher education, and the 316 to spring cumulative, we're a 308. Our goal when we had the strategic plan last summer was a 3.2, and I joke with Reggie. He's like, "Jared, that's high." I'm like, "Well, that's what we're aspiring." Like, I'd rather aim high and miss high than just aim low every time. And so, the grade piece to me is ultimately comes down to the accountability from our student athletes, the discipline to attend class. Listen, attending class is half the battle, right? And so, really proud of the success. And you mentioned football, the 2.84 GPA with football. I mean, that was really a drastic improvement from the fall. But then also, too, you start looking at the Apex program, and whether it be we have 4 student athletes studying abroad this summer. We had Women's Eagles as a We Lead. It's Women's Eagle Leadership, where we have sophomore and junior women, a program that's created by women for women. And then we also have the career tours in Atlanta. And so then you look at nutrition, and we had 0 nutritionists a year ago. We're at 2 now, and it's going to be called GATA Fuel. And so ultimately, you think about the 4 areas that surround the student athlete: strength conditioning, athletic training, sports psychology, and strength conditioning. And we're bettering those 4 areas. And especially the last year, we've gotten remarkably better. And when you have those holistically, you surround the student athlete with those support areas, I don't care what school you're at, the performance in and out of the classroom and in and out of the field of play is going to increase.
18 days from now, our Sunbelt family is going to grow by 4.
Yeah.
Going into the year with a league that will transition from 12 to 14, but all schools would be football-playing schools, what is going to represent Georgia Southern's ability to be well-positioned amongst this new group of Sunbelt schools?
Well, listen, and it's probably not what people want to hear. I don't really worry about other people in the conference. I think it kind of comes back to taking care of your own business, internal. We've got to aspire, and again, I said that when I came here, is we do have rivals. Georgia State's a rival, and App State's a rival, and you get those. But at the end of the day, we're not benchmarking, indexing ourselves against others in the conference. And so, yes, we have new teams that are coming in, and some new trips and new destinations and new opponents, and that's great. But at the end of the day, we control what we control, and that's where we have to go back to how are we getting better. And that's where it's a growth mindset. And we talk about, y'all have heard it in staff meetings, we use that word all the time, growth mindset, 2 words. And the second is a care factor. You have to care about everything, has a sense of urgency. Everything matters. And ultimately, when it's coming, relative from our leadership group on down to obviously our coaches and staff, and then we ultimately, cooperate that and show that, the results are going to continue to follow because I'm telling you that the people we have here now, we're in a rare air right now, a really special time where the results are starting to come. They're going to continue to come. But you got to focus on your own house. And, ultimately it's going to be really cool to have some new members, especially look at like in football, having 14 football institutions now going from 10. But it's also going to be more competitive. Listen, we have 8 teams, correct me if I'm wrong, 9 teams, that were bowl teams last year, right? I mean, when's the last time we played 9 teams on the schedule that made a bowl last year? But I think you also take that and overlay that. It's going to become more competitive. But, to be the preeminent, group of 5 conference in the country means you have to get better.
Yeah.
So,
got a question from Bob McKessie asking, will there be a booster weekend gathering like there was in August of 21? And to thank you for everything you've done for Georgia.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate Bob. It's always good to hear from you. We ain't got that for yet. I imagine we'll do something, but we need to take our collective breath from the baseball regional. That was a heavy lift in a couple of days, and we'll have a chance here probably coming up here the next couple of weeks to kind of plan that out.
One of the big things that you've said ever since you got to Statesboro was you've got to go hard, and then whenever you get to the summer, be able to take a step back and kind of reflect and also recharge. What's the recharge for the Benko family this year? Any big plans over the summer?
Yeah, I don't always do the best job of that, but no, it's we've got a couple conferences and piggybacking on the back of that. So it's I'm actually excited in July. We're taking the boys. I've got a deal at Notre Dame. I'm on the faculty for a conference there, and I'm going to take the boys to a Cubs game, which has always kind of been a bucket list for me.
That's awesome.
Wrigley and Fenway have always kind of been bucket list ballparks, and I'm always mad at myself. I was in Boston several years ago, actually before Sarah and I got married, and had a chance to go to a Red Sox game. It was on the Green Monster, and then they told me the price of the tickets, and it was more than my rent that month. And I had to pass. But if we get obviously we're getting Wrigley this summer, I'll have a chance to somewhere with Fenway to get, because those are the two ballparks growing up that I always idolize and always watch. So
now we've seen the ghillie suit come out. Any more pranks coming up?
Oh, there's always going to be pranks, but you have to also space them out. So yeah, we've got some. I can't divulge some of the ones. I've got a couple coaches we've talked a few about. I think this fall there'll be some good ones. We just we can't give too much credence in that. I'll tell you, I mean, the one I still get asked about that ghillie suit, and I got to find out where it's at, because I have one more prank that we could use with it, but I don't know where it's at right now. So.
I will guarantee you I know what coaches you've already talked to.
Yeah, well,
I'm not going to say it, but I guarantee I know which coaches you've talked to.
So, well, we try to have. Listen, when you work hard, you got to have a little fun. But yeah, that was actually pretty good. It's funny. Coach McCaffrey the other day, he got me, and he was actually getting me back when I scared him, and he actually is funny because he felt bad that night, and when he tackled me, and I said, listen. I think he was calling. Actually felt like a workman's comp, and I said, "Well, listen, actually, I separated my shoulder. It's actually pretty bad." And he felt so bad. I'm like, I'm just playing with you. So you gotta have to have pranks upon pranks or jokes upon pranks. So.
Jared, really appreciate you taking some time with us. I know this is a time where you like to enjoy with the family, but really appreciate you taking some time with us tonight to kind of wrap up the season. No,
sure thing. And listen, I really do think I want to reiterate about, as y'all decide to pick names for your upcoming child, that I think Danny's a great name. So when you and Rachel decide names, I think the only challenge of that is you're putting too high expectations on it.
That's true.
So
setting the bar too high.
But you could also take an N out, make an I. It works both ways.
Now you're starting to sound like Terry, whether it's Terry with a Y or Terry with an I.
I like Danny better than Terry. So what do you think? I don't know if Terry's listening right now.
We'll find out in about 15 seconds.
I know the answer to that one, too.
Sometimes we have to just make sure he's listening in. So.
Yeah. Jared, appreciate the time.
I appreciate Hail Southern.
Thanks, man.
Once again, that's Jared Benko, Director of Athletics for Georgia Southern, and a huge asset to this community and to this athletic department, there's no doubt.
I think about where we were just maybe 26 months ago and where we are now, and in another 24 to 26 months where we're going to be. With an indoor practice facility up, with a convocation center probably pretty close to being done, how much different this town is going to look. You're going to make the trip off 16, and you're not going to see the same place you did as we sit here on this June the 13th. But to be able to have the architect of what's already been done and what is about to be built, this is truly a transformational time for Georgia Southern. And to see how he does so with such positivity, it's become even more of a place that people want to be at.
And it's something that he said on the first day he was in town during his press conference. He hadn't officially taken over yet, but the best days are still ahead. And he has said that through no matter what the days we've been going through, whether it be hosting a baseball regional, whether it be a tough football season, it's always been the same message of the best days are still to come. And I think that's a huge part of the outlook for this athletic program. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that outlook is now coming to fruition.
A year ago, we were able to trumpet the fact that Georgia Southern had its best finish in the Learfield Directors Cup since 2013. I would imagine it's going to be pretty close to that this year, but coming off of the heels of just hosting a regional and where our programs are headed, the kind of momentum that is building and building and building, I would think that benchmark is going to be tested continually over the next few years.
No doubt, but really appreciate what Georgia Southern and Jared Benko has done for this athletic department. We didn't get to talk about it with Jared, but had a couple of new football games getting on the schedule the last couple of weeks. You had a home and home with Jacksonville State.
We got 5 years.
Oh, no.
We got years to talk about, though.
I'm just saying, we're recapping everything that has happened.
Got one with just a couple days ago.
A couple of days ago with Kansas State in 2027.
The Little Apple.
Is that what that's called?
Manhattan, Kansas, the Little Apple.
Never knew that.
Yeah.
Huh. How about that? At Nevada in 2024. Have to catch up with our buddy Ryan Radke while we're out there.
John Ramey, the voice of Nevada, has been out there for a couple of years. Good friend of mine. Be nice to catch up with him.
And then Samford coming to J.I. Clements Stadium to renew an old SoCon rivalry in 2027 as well. But